You know, when two powerful nations work together, the world watches with hope. They expect progress, trade, innovation, and mutual respect. But when that relationship begins to crack, it doesn't happen in one day. It's not a single speech, not a single deal gone wrong. It's a series of moments, small misunderstandings, unspoken disagreements, and silent ambitions that grow louder over time. What people often don't see is that behind every official handshake, there are invisible tensions. Behind every smiling photograph, there are negotiations that leave one side quietly dissatisfied. This is not just about politics, it's about pride, economics, and the future each side envisions for itself. And when two giants have different dreams, even the strongest alliance begins to feel the strain. Alliances break not because of one big argument, but because of 1,000 small silent disagreements. This is the truth that most people fail to see when they look at the breakup of great partnerships, whether between individuals, companies, or nations. When you see a headline about two countries ending cooperation, it might feel sudden, like it came out of nowhere. But the reality is that cracks begin forming long before the public notices. They start with something so small that both sides ignore it, thinking it's not worth discussing. A missed promise here, an unfair expectation there. At first, both parties move on because they believe the bigger picture matters more than these minor issues. But in the shadows, these little moments begin to accumulate. In the case of India and America, this is not just about trade disputes or political speeches. It's about years of small incidents that slowly eroded trust. Maybe it was a promise of investment that never materialized. Maybe it was a trade condition that seemed harmless at first, but hurt local industries over time. Maybe it was a military deal where the fine print favored one side more than the other. None of these alone were enough to destroy the alliance, but together, they planted seeds of resentment. The problem with these seeds is that they don't disappear. They grow quietly, like roots under the surface, until one day they break through the ground for everyone to see. In diplomacy, silence can be more dangerous than open conflict. When two nations disagree and talk about it openly, there's a chance for resolution. But when disagreements are buried to protect the image of friendship, they only fester. In private, leaders might walk away from meetings thinking, they don't understand us or they don't respect our position. Over time, this unspoken dissatisfaction shapes decisions, even if both sides keep smiling in front of the cameras. Every relationship, personal or political, is built on the belief that both sides gain something valuable. But when one side begins to feel like they are giving more than they are receiving, the balance shifts. For a long time, India may have felt that the partnership with America was necessary to strengthen its global standing, access technology, and grow its economy. At the same time, America may have seen India as a key ally to counterbalance other powers and open new markets. This mutual benefit kept the relationship strong, even when small issues arose. But slowly, those benefits began to look less equal. Perhaps America's demands became heavier, expecting India to align with certain policies or to distance itself from other countries for strategic reasons. Perhaps India began to feel that these demands were limiting its freedom to make independent choices. At the same time, India's own rise in global influence meant it no longer felt the need to depend as much on American approval. This is where silent disagreements become dangerous. Because now, each side starts to think, we don't need them as much as we used to, and the thought changes the tone of every negotiation. These unspoken changes in perception don't make the headlines, but they are the foundation of every major split. You see it in the way trade deals suddenly stall for no obvious reason. You see it when joint statements after summits become shorter, less enthusiastic, and filled with vague diplomatic language. You see it when leaders visit each other less often, or when their speeches begin to emphasize self-reliance and independence more than partnership and cooperation. Another thing people underestimate is how domestic politics can fuel these silent disagreements. Leaders in both countries have to think about their voters, not just their allies abroad. If one leader feels that being too close to the other side will hurt their image at home, they will subtly create distance. This might be through tariffs, policy changes, or public criticism disguised as general statements. These moves might not be called attacks in the media, but they slowly push the two sides apart. What makes these situations even more fragile is pride. Once a nation feels it has been treated unfairly, it becomes harder to compromise without looking weak. Leaders start making decisions not only based on what's best economically or strategically, but also on what will protect their image as strong and independent. And when both sides think this way at the same time, even small negotiations become battles of ego rather than discussions of mutual benefit. The public often sees only the final straw, the big announcement, the failed deal, the angry speech, but by that point, the relationship has been dying for years. The real story is in the quiet moments behind closed doors where leaders leave meetings unsatisfied, where advisors warn about unfair treatment, and where small policy shifts are made to test the other side's reaction. Those moments never make it to the front page, but they are the ones that truly break an alliance. The India-America split is not a story of one betrayal or one sudden clash. It is a story of many tiny fractures, each one ignored because it seemed too small to matter. But when you put them together, they form a fault line that can no longer be hidden. And when that fault line
national
finally
pride
collides with strategic interest, sudden only to those who were not paying attention to the silence in between. This is a reality that has played out countless times in history, whether between empires, corporations, or close allies. Nations, like people, have identities. They have values, traditions, and a sense of dignity that they guard fiercely. National pride is not just about waving flags or celebrating Independence Days. It is about the deep belief that a country's sovereignty, culture, and voice cannot be compromised. On the other side, strategic interest is about cold calculation, weighing benefits, risks, and long-term gains without letting emotions interfere. When these two forces align, partnerships flourish. When they conflict, even the strongest bonds can turn into rivalries. In the case of India and America, there was a period where strategic interests were perfectly aligned. America saw India as a rising power in Asia that could help maintain balance in a world where new powers were challenging old ones. India saw America as a gateway to advanced technology, investments, and global influence. Both nations benefited from trade agreements, defense collaborations, and shared democratic values. For a while, it seemed like a perfect fit, pride and interest working together toward the same goals. But the problem is, alliances like this rarely stay balanced forever. As India's economy grew and its influence expanded, so did its confidence. With that confidence came a stronger sense of national pride, the belief that India could shape its own destiny without relying too heavily on anyone else. For America, the shift was not necessarily bad, but it complicated the relationship. Strategic interest often requires one side to make compromises, and those compromises can feel like insults when national pride is at stake. When a trade deal demands that one country lower tariffs, or when a defense agreement requires limits on certain partnerships, leaders must choose between practical gains and the perception of standing strong. This is where the collision begins. For example, America might expect India to align with its policies against certain countries. From a strategic perspective, it makes sense. Allies should stand together against shared threats. But for India, agreeing too quickly might be seen as bending to foreign pressure, which could damage its image as an independent power. On the other hand, India might pursue closer ties with countries that America views as rivals. Strategically, this could be about diversifying partnerships, but for America, it can feel like betrayal. What is simply a calculated move in the chess game of global politics can be interpreted as a challenge to pride and loyalty. The difficulty is that neither side is wrong. Strategic interest demands flexibility, but national pride demands consistency. Leaders must balance these forces while knowing that their opponents at home will exploit any perceived weakness. In India, political rivals might accuse the government of being too dependent on America. In America, critics might claim that India is taking advantage of those support without offering enough in return. These domestic pressures feed into diplomatic tensions, turning private disagreements into public standoffs. What makes pride such a powerful force in these situations is that it is emotional, not rational. Strategic interest can be measured: profits, military advantages, technological gains. Pride, however, is about perception, about how a nation sees itself and how it believes the world sees it. This is why conflicts driven by pride are often harder to resolve than those based on pure strategy. You can renegotiate a trade deal, but you cannot simply erase the feeling that your country has been disrespected. Once pride is wounded, every future negotiation carries the shadow of that injury. In international relations, symbolic gestures can matter as much as actual agreements. A public statement of support, a respectful recognition of the other nation's role, or willingness to treat them as an equal partner can strengthen bonds far more than economic incentives alone. Conversely, even a small slight, an overlooked invitation, a dismissive remark by a high-ranking official, a one-sided announcement, can trigger resentment that no amount of money or military aid can fully repair. When pride and strategy clash, these symbolic moments become turning points. With India and America, this clash has been gradual. As both countries pursued their own strategic interests, moments arose where pride was tested. Perhaps it was a negotiation where one side felt its demands were dismissed too quickly. Perhaps it was a security agreement that seemed to favor one nation's concerns over the other's. Perhaps it was a global stage where one leader's words implied dominance rather than partnership. Each time this happened, the gap widened. Not because the strategic benefits disappeared, but because the sense of equal respect was eroded. Over time, this turns cooperation into competition. Leaders may still talk about friendship in public, but behind the scenes, They begin preparing for a world where the other side is less of a partner and more of a rival. Investments are redirected, alliances are diversified, and policies are designed to reduce dependency. The language changes subtly. Joint cooperation becomes independent initiatives, and shared vision becomes mutual understanding without specifics. These shifts may seem small, but they reveal the underlying reality. Both nations are protecting their pride while pursuing their interests separately. The irony is that both sides may still benefit from working together, but neither is willing to appear as though they are compromising their dignity for the sake of strategy. This is the battlefield of pride versus interest, a place where decisions are made not just on what is possible, but on what looks strong. And in this space, friendships are fragile, because the smallest perceived insult can outweigh years of mutual gain.